Welcome again, race fans. Today will be installment number 3 of the Auto World Super 3, or how to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear knot. This was more problematic than what I thought. If you remember in the first two installations, we talked about some upgrades for the Super 3 and how to make them better. I could get on my soapbox and rant some about that, and maybe I will, but let's cover the basics first. We took one of the Indy car units and decided to apply some of the basic hop-up techniques to it. This particular car, we put in a high-quality 6 ohm armature. Actually probably measures like 5.9. The armature that was in it was about 7.5 ohms. So that was one of the first things that we did. In the process of doing that, the brush barrels, one of the screws in the brush barrel would not go back in. It's a terrible design the way they have this, with a very small Phillips head arrangement that if that strips out in any way, shape, or form, you're done. And because it's more of a machine thread over a standard brush barrel that comes from Wizzard or Slot Tech, you cannot use their screws, their brush barrel screws. So you're kind of done. So what I had to do to make this thing work, I had to pull out the old Auto World set up and put in Wizzards, and because the chassis is a little bit different design and it's narrower, I actually had to put some shims behind the brush barrels so they would go in, and therefore that also created an issue, like so many things that cascade through, is I had to relieve the body in order for the brush barrels to have clearance, but we got it to work. So that's one thing. The second thing, the magnets as they came in the car were not pushed down to the very bottom of the chassis, so I went in, put the car without an axle on a setup block, and then pushed the magnets down and super glued them in place so they wouldn't move. We got rid of the standard factory rear axle set and pinion gear, put on a Viper pinion and axle set and 265 single flanged hubs and super tires. And the car actually runs quite well, all things considered. We didn't do any pickup shoe modifications on this because I kept the front tires that were on the car, and it seems to run fairly well as it is. But there are just so many little things about this car that just don't have to be. And I would take Auto World to task on this, that they just are not paying attention to just some very basic quality issues, and if they don't care, they just need to come out and say that they don't care. But I would be very happy to work with them in improving their quality if they had a mind to. So take note, all you people up there at Auto World, that if you want to get your cars to where people actually like them, other than the cool paint, that they actually run like they should, there's some things that you can do to, I can't imagine it would cost you much more than 50 cents or $1 at the manufacturing wellhead, as it were, to actually get these cars to where they're just less problematic, just the basics. One of the things that could be done that would really be helpful, if the mold was modified slightly so it doesn't have as much hang down area. I mean, as it is, the motor magnets don't even come down even with the bottom of the chassis. So there would be room to go on ahead and lower the bottom of the chassis. These magnets could be glued in place, and it would actually lower the center of gravity quite a bit and allow for better handling. Things like making sure that the brush barrels are threaded to the same convention that Slot Tech and Wizzard brush barrels are threaded to, so if people lose parts, they can root around and easily find replacement parts. The motor magnets need to be looked at because they don't fit in very well. There's some issues there. Either modify the chassis or the magnets so they fit in better. And the traction magnets need to be put in at the bottom of the chassis and then have some glue put in on top of that. There's some other things maybe with the pickup shoes and the pickup springs that could be looked at. And the gear set certainly probably is the single most important thing that needs attention in that. But anyway, we will run the car and see what it does. Alright, let's run a few laps. Alright, so there you have it. We'll run a few laps. I decided that with the way this car is set up with the long wheelbase, that probably trying to put the 3.5 ohm armature in it would be a little too much speed. And indeed I believe so after running it with a high quality 6 ohm motor. I think it has plenty of speed. Because of the issue of the long travel with pickups, the standard front tires, the length of the wheelbase, I think any more speed might be detrimental. But you know, a few of these little mods, these cars could be kind of interesting to run. Maybe even once you do all this, maybe even run them at about 16 volts as opposed to 18, depending on your layout, and they could become interesting cars. So there you have it, trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I think probably at the end of the day all we have is a backpack.